Hi, this is Jared Polak, founder of Entre Results, author of Entre Balance, author of Entre Business, founder of Entre Results Academy, back for another awesome podcast. This is a podcast I've never done this before, but there's been a lot of interest around this idea of freeing up time in order to either grow the business or have more personal time. And people are just fascinated with this concept of how can I free up more time? People are overworked and overwhelmed. And there was a previous podcast I've done in the past that had these 8 different ways to free up more time. And I guess what I'm going to do on this podcast is get a little bit more detailed, maybe have a few different examples. People wanted a little bit more to go deeper with these 8 different ways to free up more time. Now, there's certainly more than these 8 ways, but that's what we're going to cover today. So we've had this in a podcast before. However, I think it's worthy to do this again and maybe go a little bit deeper. Okay, so here's 8 ways, and starting off with number 1. This is one thing that a lot of people don't think about to free up more time in business, is to fire bad clients. There are countless examples of people I've worked with, people that I've just met with, people that our other coaches have met with, where as you begin to meet and learn more about business, you sometimes find out that people are selling products or selling services that actually don't make money for the business. Now, for example, if you have 3 different services you provide, it's not super surprising to find that only one of those services is super profitable. And so maybe the second one you kind of break even or make a little bit of money, and the third one you're not making money at all. And whether you're talking about your product or service lines or just the clients that you bring on board, it's super important to fire bad clients or eliminate bad product lines. So a bad client, maybe even if there's a client that is a part of a service which is normally very profitable, in this case, maybe they take up so much time, or perhaps they ask all these different questions, or here's something that happens. If you have certain core values in your company and your clients are breaking those core values, are forcing you to put yourself in a position where you feel like your core values are compromised, it actually creates a lot of stress. It creates a lot of time. It creates a lot of thought. It puts more pressure on your team. And so even if the actual dollars show that you're making money, it's possible to be losing money on that client. It's certainly sucking up a lot of time and not working. So fire bad clients. In addition to that, get rid of products or services that aren't profitable. Number 2, hiring a part-time or full-time assistant is a great way to free up more time. I know this is maybe something that people have thought about before, but in order to do this, one thing we really need to look at is what is our time worth per hour, for example. How much do we measure our time worth per hour? Now, if you measure your time to be worth $50 an hour or $100 an hour or $20 an hour or $500 an hour, that's a great starting point to know who to hire and how to hire. Now, the way to find out what your time is worth, one, we have a process for this, and it's not a super complicated process, but one is to actually kind of divide up your time based on how many hours you work per week versus how much you make per week. And you can actually get a physical number, an actual number of how much you are earning per hour. Or I think even more important that sometimes we have to consider, okay, what do we want our hourly worth to be? What are we striving to work towards? Or maybe if we have a build rate and maybe we only build 25 hours a week, but we work 45 hours per week, we want to get to the fact that we actually, all our time is worth our billable rate. And so maybe coming up with an ideal number for how much your time is worth. Then what we can do is go about figuring out how to go about bringing on a part-time or full-time assistant. If you're in business development, a lot of people have limiting beliefs that, oh, I don't own the business, so I shouldn't have an assistant. That is a major belief system or a fear that is holding you back from growth. Multiple people that are sales professionals that we have worked with over time, in order to get to that next level, after they, figured out sort of the process of selling, the mindset of selling, the product knowledge, once you get that core training down for selling, it's about getting to that next level. To get to that next level in business development or business growth, you have to free up time and you have to leverage an assistant. So even if you're in business development, you can leverage a part-time or full-time assistant. Certainly, I usually recommend starting out part-time if that makes sense for your industry. There are people throughout the world, no matter what you're earning here in the United States, or if you're listening to this in the western part of Europe, something like that. Listen, we can find people in different places throughout the world who are very qualified, absolutely motivated, and if we have the right hiring process and we have the right job description and job scorecard and accountabilities, we can hire the right part-time or full-time assistants. So let's not let our mindset hold us back from freeing up more time. The third thing is looking at the pre-plan for your day. This frees up a ton of time. And it could be spending 5 to 15 minutes at the end of your previous day or the morning of your day. So for example, if you finish work at 5 o'clock on Thursday, at 4:45 on Thursday, you plan out your Friday. You plan it out with what are the activities that you want to be successful at, maybe your top 3. How will you know you've won on Friday? You lay it out. And that way, at 5 o'clock, when you're done for the day on Thursday, you can sleep well, knowing that you're ready to rock and roll on Friday. This was one of the best things that I learned right out of college with the first company I was with out of college. Talked a lot about a pre-plan, and here's what a lot of us face. A lot of us kind of intuitively know this habit's important. However, many of us, the overwhelming majority of us, don't do it because of laziness, because we just get out of the habit. And so if you are there and you know you should do it, I encourage you to do it because it's going to end up freeing up a lot of time. It might carve off hours of your day if you're just focused from when you get started. I definitely see this as a habit that is formed in many successful leaders. And so I encourage you to work on that. That's number 3. Number 4, in order to free up more time, is to eliminate gaps in your schedule. Like, it is crucial to have a tight schedule. Now, what I want to do, and I'm not always the best example, but we do try to live out what we're coaching, and so this is definitely something I strive to do well for myself, is to kind of figure out our schedule. I'm going to just share a little bit about my schedule right now, and this is kind of off the cuff, so maybe I'll miss out on a thing or two, but I think this will give you a good idea of how to schedule your calendar and also not to have gaps. First of all, before we schedule anything, I do think that for me, it's getting on my calendar the time off that I'm going to spend. I do believe in taking one full day off per week, not working, not thinking about work, not doing anything work related, just completely off. Certainly, I oftentimes do more than that. Sometimes I take off much more than just 1 day per week. However, on the calendar, it's taking off 1 day per week. So what is that day for me? What's that day for you? Then it's important to schedule other things in our calendar, like if you're married, like for me, scheduling date night with our spouse, that's super important. What's the rhythm look like for that on the calendar? What is the time to make sure that we invest in our families, in our kids? When are we going to invest in that? And then thinking through friends that we want to spend time with. Also health. When are we going to work out? What are we going to do in order to increase our heart rates, cardio, those type of things? I get that on my calendar because I know those things are crucial for life. And so in many ways, I put the life stuff on there first, and then I work back to the business. And so what are the most important things in business? Well, I know creating planning is important. So once every quarter, I take off one full day to get away to kind of my own personal retreat where I get a chance to plan and pray and plan some more, both business and personal life. So you have that full day to kind of map out your calendar for the next quarter. And there's a whole process for this that I go on that I'm not going to talk about just based on time for today, but that's a part of the schedule. And then as you look at the weekly schedule, you think about, okay, what are the most important things that we need to work on? Well, I know business development still is important for my business, whether it's planning marketing activities or just managing the marketing process. So I schedule a repeating block on my calendar to work on marketing activities. Certainly business development activities for many of us, we need to have that locked in there. Time to meet with people on our team, that's on there. And also locking in, for me, it's just been the people that I work with, the coaching clients that we serve, you get that locked in there. And then I also have a little space on Fridays where there's just kind of like a little gap in there to schedule for some of the things that maybe just didn't quite get done for that week, just a little time so I can finish out Friday feeling good about the week itself. And in terms of my coaching schedules, it's back to back to back. In terms of my appointments, they're back to back to back. Sometimes a little 5-minute gap here or there just to get a little break. But you can actually, I found that I can be ultra productive. I can help and serve more people if I do the back to back. Now, again, I mean, there's some exceptions to this, but for the most part, eliminating gaps in the schedule is a really good idea. So that's something to be encouraged on in terms of eliminating gaps from your schedule. Number 5, in terms of freeing up time, is letting people, basically eliminating those got-a-minute interruptions, eliminating that chit-chat that happens. I mean, this is crucial. And so a couple things to think about. One, sometimes people that are naturally talkative or naturally people pleasers have a hard time creating some limits on chit chat or got-a-minute interruptions. And so first of all, you have to think, and we do the DISC profile a lot of times to identify where people are at, what their communication style is. And sometimes a test can identify that. And if you guys are interested in that, please, we'd be happy to help you with the DISC profile. But some people, this just it's difficult to cut people off. And so you have to come up with a plan or a strategy for not allowing these interruptions. And it might be, something like, hey, if someone calls, hey, super glad you called. I only have, a few minutes to chat. What's up? And so maybe when someone calls and they interrupt you, like right off the bat, you let them know you have a little bit of a time frame to chat. Or, sometimes you have to go to a place where you're prevented from being interrupted from other people, whether that's an office, an isolated office, closing your door sometimes. And so this is really important for freeing up time because there can be hours of wasted time throughout the day. And there's another thing that comes up later in terms of how to free up time that kind of relates to this. Some of these points are overlapping. So eliminating chit chat, eliminating those got-a-minute interruptions. Number 6 way to free up time is meeting in groups. Leveraging multiple people at one time as opposed to meeting one-to-one. Now, in our coaching model, we have a lot of different coaching programs. We have virtual courses. We have books that people can read. We have individual coaching. We have group coaching. And in our model with Entre Results for the kind of the higher level coaching, we do a combination of group and one-to-one coaching because I believe to my core that one-on-one is crucial. And so I'm making a business decision saying, listen, even though this isn't the highest leverage activity, I believe that it goes with our core values. I think it's important to get results, and I'm willing to make less profit, to make less money, because I think it works and I think it's significant. So, even for us as an example, there are times where you aren't going to meet in groups. However, you have to just be very cognizant of why. And so, for example, Meeting in groups is great for networking as opposed to just networking, maybe speaking in front of a group. Then you can get in front of many people at a time. Maybe if you want to learn about another business, get a couple other businesses together at one time, you can leverage that. With your team, as opposed to sharing it with each person individually, get the team together, which we're going to talk about in the next point. There's a lot of different things to leverage, but always wonder, why am I doing things one-on-one? And if you are, make sure you're real clear of why you're doing it. And if you're real clear about that, it can be okay. But a lot of times there's a lot of stuff wasted, a lot of time wasted because we just do things one-to-one. Next is having short, consistent meetings as opposed to endless back and forth. Now this kind of goes along. The chit chat in number 5 was a little different. That was a little bit different than that. Meeting in groups, kind of similar. But what I'm talking about here is having meeting rhythms with other people. Specific meeting rhythms. In work, it's great to have daily huddles sometimes with people that report to you. Hey, what's up? What's going on today? What's the one thing you're working on? Where do you feel stuck? How can I help? And that way it kind of gets it out into a small group from the beginning. So having these short, consistent meetings is helpful. Have you ever found yourself going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on emails or calls? Listen, it's better just to set a meeting, schedule it, and make it happen. This is really crucial for execution of businesses. And in terms of the meetings, gosh, I talk about daily huddles. Oftentimes, weekly meetings are good. Monthly, a little bit larger. Quarterly, like more retreats, and yearly, the annual retreat. There's different meetings you do. But let's just focus on this one, on those short daily meetings to free up more time. Last and certainly not least, and kind of along with everything else, is setting personal boundaries. Setting personal boundaries. Now, kind of like we talked about earlier in the example about the schedule and creating the schedule, listen, this one goes hand in hand with the calendar, because once you have your calendar set up, once you have your schedule set up where you know when you're investing time with people you care about, when you're taking time off, when you're working on business development, when you're meeting with clients, then you have to set boundaries around that to allow that space to be protected. Many people have the ability to set a calendar and set a schedule that's beautiful and should work. It just doesn't work because they're not willing to protect that time and those boundaries. So for example, I can schedule a full day off, but if I allow interruptions to happen and allow things to break, I have no boundaries for that calendar, it doesn't work. So what I'm going to challenge you to do, and what I do is, there are exceptions. So for my boundaries, if there's an emergency, a true emergency, I can break my schedule, I can break my calendar. If it's a true emergency, even if I'm on a date night with my wife, I can break that. Like, meaning if the kids are in a health situation and the babysitter calls, I'm going to pick up the phone, because that's a boundary worth breaking. But normally when we set boundaries for our clients or for business development, we allow things to be broken even though it shouldn't. So thinking about boundaries, that is crucial. Now, this is just kind of going a little bit deeper with what we've already talked about in some of the previous podcasts. I know we've written about this. We have blogs about this. We have all this awesome content about freeing up time, but I hope this was an encouragement to you. I hope you've taken some of these examples and you're going to take action and apply this to your life. Make it a better than amazing day.